Tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Blessings, good evening. Historically, it's said the Buddha gave his first main teaching on Asalaha Puja, the full moon day, a couple of weeks ago, back in his lifetime. And on that occasion, Venerable Kondanya, one of the 5 first students of the Buddha, attained the Dhamma eye, became a stream enterer. And then over the subsequent days, the other 4 students of the Buddha, first students of the Buddha, also attained the same realization, the Dhamma eye. In brief, understanding the impermanent nature of the 5 khandhas: body, feelings, perceptions, thought formations, and sense consciousness. It's the way the Buddha described a human being to help us understand more deeply and reflect on the truth. All of these first 5 students of the Buddha had penetrating insight into the impermanent nature of the 5 khandhas, and that helped them to abandon sakkaya ditthi, what we call self-view or personality view, taking it all as a self, me, mine, myself, seeing as this body and mind as a permanent being, seen through that delusion. And the next main teaching that we know of that he gave was the Anattalakkhana Sutta, where he took it a step further and encouraged his students to look deeply into the selfless or ownerless nature of body and mind, these 5 khandhas. Not just on the level of, say, view or belief, which is what sakkaya ditthi refers to. Ditthi means a view, which you attach to. So like the view, this body is me, my thoughts are me, my feelings, emotions are me, a self. He took them beyond that, helping them to investigate into not only to see the impermanent nature of the 5 khandhas, but also to see the 5 khandhas are inherently, we say, dukkha, painful, stressful, because they're constantly changing, and ultimately to see that these 5 khandhas are not a self, not just on the level of, say, view or belief, but to actually realize, we say, not self. So many people practicing Buddhism, they have this sort of doubt. They say, oh, well, I know that. I know this body, this mind, my feelings, emotions are impermanent. They're stressful, they come and go, they're not really a self, I don't own them. Intellectually, we can think it through, we can understand it, and remember the teachings, remember the words. So then they say, well, why aren't I enlightened then? Because I know all this. Maybe you've heard it so many times that when a monk starts teaching, you start falling asleep because it's so familiar. It's not very interesting anymore if you've heard it 100 times. But that's not really knowing with the heart. That's just knowing with the intellect and the memory. And perhaps those first 5 students of the Buddha, they're all ready to actually really know, to penetrate those truths with their heart. And particularly their practice of mindfulness and the ability to observe the truth from moment to moment was well developed. Because of course memory, intellect, the thinking mind is a bit uncertain. Sometimes you remember that everything is impermanent, suffering, not self, and sometimes you forget. When do we forget? Oh, when we're suffering. When you're suffering, you tend to attach, don't you? You say, oh, I'm suffering. And you've forgotten already that it's impermanent and not self. But if you've trained in Sila, Samadhi, Panya, the Noble Eightfold Path, and your mindfulness is well developed, well sustained, right effort, right mindfulness, right samadhi is established, then you can have a deep insight into the emptiness, we say the emptiness of the mind. And the way the Buddha got them to, the first 5 students of the Buddha, to see that, to get to that point, had them question their experience. Is this body, this form, permanent or impermanent? Is it sukha or dukkha? Because what's impermanent cannot give you lasting happiness, pleasure. There is pleasure to be had with a human body. You get feeling, pleasant feeling, but it's impermanent, it's subject to change. It's not certain, it's uncertain, it's unreliable. Can't give you a dependable, reliable happiness because everything changes, nothing lasts. And what is impermanent, painful, stressful, is it appropriate to take that as a self? Well, we do that all the time. We say, oh, my body hurts, my body is this way, my body is that way, I feel like this, I feel like that, I think this, I think that. From moment to moment we may say, I am this thought, I am this feeling. But the whole point when you are developing strong mindfulness, states of stillness and calm based on that, then you're just observing from moment to moment, from a place of quietness and stillness. This sense of self disappears. So even though the body is still subject to aging, sickness and death, subject to decline, feelings still arise and pass away according to the different conditions. When the mind has looked into this from a place of stillness and quietness, observed very clearly, and then the mind sees it's just empty. The sense of self disappears. So another way they talk about Nibbana, the Buddha talks about Nibbana, is it's the supreme emptiness, sunyata, sunyo, empty of self. This is what he was teaching his students to see, but through a process of, you might call it a process of elimination, asking questions and eliminating the wrong view, wrong understanding that may still be left in the mind, till the 5 khandhas were seen as empty, empty of self. And this seeing, observing of emptiness. It's no longer just remembering that they're empty. You're remembering the words. It's knowing, seeing, knowing, clear, what we call clear knowledge and vision. There's no being or self in body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and sense consciousness. The modern word we get is vipassana. So we say now everyone likes to go on a vipassana course, which is good. There's nothing wrong with that. But often we take that to be the whole of the Buddha's teachings. This is where it began, where it started from, the Buddha teaching this way of investigating experience from a place of mindfulness, stillness, asking questions, looking and observing. When you're mindful and observing, you don't even really need to think a lot about it. We also have this problem, everyone likes to ask, well, what does contemplation or vipassana or reflection, insight, meditation, what does it mean? Or clearly seeing, clearly knowing, or clearly seeing the nature of body, feelings, perceptions, thought formations and sense consciousness. It doesn't mean thinking about them anymore. And of course we do think about them sometimes, can't help it. Doesn't just mean remembering. You remember stuff about this body and this mind, of course, but it doesn't mean that. It means just knowing from moment to moment to moment the way things are, that there's no self there. So there's no delusion. So you might say it's just knowing emptiness all the time, to the point where that's what the mind is with, emptiness of self. So those 5 students of the Buddha, hearing this talk, going through the process of vipassana, what we call anupassī, clear seeing, and they all became fully enlightened, reached Nibbana. Which is one of the most important things in Buddhism, because there's a tendency to think of the Buddha as a special being, almost like a god or godlike. And then you separate in your mind, oh, there's the Buddha, someone special, self-enlightened, this amazing teacher with great psychic powers, can recollect past lives and all these special knowledges. And then you come back and look at yourself with self-view, because we're still unenlightened, so you go, oh, and then there's me, little old me, and you seem like you're a long way from the Buddha. But the whole point is, the Buddha could teach. He's a very good teacher, and he could teach ordinary people to practice and get to that point where they're seeing, knowing emptiness. So it's not just a solo experience for the Buddha. It's something that he could guide others to also understand, have the same realization. That's what gives us hope in our practice, gives us faith, we say, because it's what it means is that other people can practice this as well, not just the Buddha. And so we have this whole tradition, what we call now Buddhism, Buddhist religion, which people tend to think of as just something you believe in or don't believe in, accept or reject maybe. But it's not, it's just a way of explaining the truth and then practicing according to that truth to realize that truth that's been passed down from generation to generation. It's open for everyone. You don't have to be any particular age or gender or background. It's open to anyone who wants to practice. And it works. And those first 5 students of the Buddha proved that it worked, and then from there the teachings gradually spread. Many other people have become enlightened, right down to the present day. Another doubt that comes up in the mind of the practitioner is always, but when will I get enlightened? It's all very well for the first 5 students of the Buddha. When will I get enlightened? Well, the Buddha said, if you practice this path, cultivate the Noble Eightfold Path, Sila, Samadhi, Panya, it's only a matter of time before you understand and know for yourself what he was talking about. It's the experience of emptiness, non-attachment, insight into not self. It will happen for sure. You could almost say that. He didn't put clear kind of time limit on it until one has attained the first stage of enlightenment, like Venerable Kondanya. So the Buddha said, one who's experienced stream entry, well, they won't have to be born more than 7 lifetimes. Another way he talked about it said, the suffering of a stream entry. One time the Buddha took his hand and scraped it on the earth, so they had a bit of dirt under his fingernails. He said the suffering of a stream enterer, Sotapanna, is equivalent to the dirt under my nails. The suffering of an ordinary unenlightened being who's subject to birth and death over and over again is equivalent to all the earth in the world. What's more? Well, better to have a bit of grit under your nails than have the whole earth of the whole world to deal with. It's probably the only time in history that it's been good to have dirt under your nails. When you're a kid, your mum tells you to clean your nails, scrub your nails. Well, my mum didn't, because it's considered impolite to have dirty nails. But in this case, having dirty nails is a good thing, because it means, you've only got maximum of 7 lifetimes of suffering to come. Nowadays we're all into measuring things, statistics and time. So our culture is obsessed with it. So that this is how the Buddha at least gave you a reflection. You still can't say how long it will take until you gain the Dhamma eye. But he gave you the means, and he said if you attain the first level of enlightenment, well, that's what you can expect. 7 more lifetimes maximum, maybe quicker, maybe 1 lifetime. Just depends. Depends on your effort. Depends on different factors, how many obstacles, how much karma you've made. There's some kinds of obstructive karma that even with all the best effort in the world, you're not going to get enlightened this life. We have to accept that, and that's why we practice sila and precepts, what we call the anantariya karma. You to murder your parents, or an arahant, or try and attack a Buddha, or split the Sangha, then you're not going to get enlightened this lifetime. It doesn't preclude you forever, but this lifetime is too difficult. The karma is too heavy. But most people don't do that, don't make that kind of heavy karma. So even if you have karma, you've been a bit unskillful up till now in your life, made a few mistakes, which everyone has, doesn't mean to say you can't get enlightened. But it just depends on the different factors, how much effort, what happens along the way. And that's why people go and seek out good teachers. A teacher will speed things up. If you have a good teacher and you listen to them, and you can have a good teacher and not listen to them, but if you have a good teacher and you listen to the good teacher and try and put what they say into practice, then it speeds the process up again. Again, it depends on the level of attachment for the person. This mind can be very helpful to us in the practice, or it can be very painful, a big obstacle, big troublemaker for us. Talking about it earlier today, why do we suffer? Well, because we get caught into unwholesome states of mind which lead to unwholesome speech, unwholesome action. And instead of bringing up the qualities of the path, mindfulness, insight, doing the opposite, we're attaching more and more with greed, anger, delusion, going further away from the path. And someone was saying, well, even just to be a good person, isn't that an attachment? Once you have this idea, I've got to be a good person, that's something you've got to live up to, and then sometimes you're self-critical or feel depressed, or I'm not a good person. Attached to the ideal, you might call that another form of Sakkaya Ditthi, self-view, even the view of trying to be a good person. That's why Ajahn Chah said, don't be anything. So sometimes you have to roll it back and say, okay, I'm not going to be a good person or try to be a good person, because even that becomes an attachment, a suffering. But I will put effort into cultivating the path. So where did the Buddha start? He said, well, he didn't say be a good person or try to be a good person. If you can't think a good thought, at least don't think a bad thought. If you can't say a good thing, a good word, well, at least don't say a bad word. If you can't do anything good, at least don't do things that are bad, evil, harmful. Just start there. Everyone can do that. Everyone can stop themselves doing something bad or saying something bad, something unskillful, hurtful. You start there. You don't have to be a good person. Just stop the worst tendencies from coming out in your behaviour. That's a good start. And you work from there onwards. If you really get that sorted, you're already very close to being a Sotapanna. The Sotapanna, they don't break the 5 precepts, they don't hurt others. They don't burden other people with their problems. They still have problems, but they don't burden others or take them out on other people, which has become so fashionable now. You have suffering and then you have to tell the world about it and make sure everyone else is suffering with you. That's what Sakkaya Ditthi does. You attach to your suffering with this sense of self. This is me, I am suffering. And what does it do? It makes you have to tell everyone about it and do things based on that suffering, that pain. In the way of the Buddha, this learning to establish mindfulness and observe is the opposite. It's not saying there isn't any suffering, there is. But instead of taking it out on the world and spreading it around to others, you develop the ability to observe, oh, it's like this. And when mindfulness is there, maybe there's even pain in the body, mental pain, anguish, but you don't create any further suffering out of it. You just know it as it is. Oh, it's like this. So sila, or morality, moral integrity, becomes established very clearly. What leads us to hurt ourselves or hurt others is when we have this strong self-view and we're not reflecting in the way the Buddha encouraged. We go and we believe in the self, whether it's a good self, bad self, doesn't really matter, but because you believe in this self, then you go and do things based on that. And then we get a view, we say, oh, this is a good person, this is a bad person, because of what they've done. But humans can do good or skillful things and unskillful things, bad things. Doesn't make that, it's not a permanent fixed reality, is it? If someone is always bad, always good. Depends on the conditioning and the intentions in the mind. Again, that's another premise that the Buddhist practice is based on, is that you can change, so you can develop more good intentions, skillful action, and abandon the unskillful, the bad. It's not fixed. The more Sakkaya Ditthi you have, the more self-view you have, the more you have this sense that it's fixed, it's always like this is who I am. I'm the angry one, or I'm the selfish one, or I'm the bad one, or I'm the good one. But these are views that you impose on yourself, and then you start following along with your behavior. So, what we do have in common is we're all people, humans. And humans can do good things, humans can do bad things. And sometimes it's alternating, isn't it? But we all have that much in common. And that's why it's so central to the Buddhist teaching. The Buddha encouraged us to look at what we do know for sure. I'm a human being, subject to aging, sickness, death. One day I have to die. But even this much we don't like to think about. We love to think about birth. When the baby's born, very happy, birthdays, anniversaries, we love to remember. Nobody likes to think about their death or getting old. Really, you should give a little handbook to every kid and say, you're going to get old, get ready for it. But, we don't like to do that, it's too depressing. But that's because of Sakkaya Ditthi. We don't like the idea of being an old person. We hide away old age, sickness, put everyone who's sick into hospital, death, don't like to think about death, talk about death. I regularly get told off for talking about death. Ajahn, don't talk about death. People think the more you talk about it, the quicker it will happen. Maybe it will, I don't know. But it comes together. This much we all have in common. You like someone, you don't like them. We all are subject to aging, sickness, death. In Buddhism we say we're friends in that. We're friends in aging, sickness and death. Friends in the sense that it's just our common humanity, common experience. So things are impermanent. It's just normal. It's normal to face aging, sickness and death. And aging isn't just being old, it's also, when you're young, you're already aging from day one. You grow, you change. Your body changes, your mind changes. So we just chanted that, I am the nature to age, sicken, die. Separation from all that I love and like is for sure. No way around it. You might as well prepare yourself by reflecting on this. But we don't. We profess our love forever and ever, eternal love. Going to stay with you forever. Write songs about it, write movies and novels about it. Seek it out. Again, it's Sakkaya Ditthi, is the idea of something permanent, lasting. We're fooling ourselves, deluding ourselves. Doesn't mean to say love is no good, or kindness is no good, or all the good qualities that come with love is no good, or not desirable, not wanted. But it's more the idea of it, is it? The self-view that forms. I always remember the story of Lum Buddha, great arahant in Thailand. He's a monk for 4 years, he's already enlightened. He wasn't lazy, he meditated. He practiced meditating day and night. His mindfulness very good, insight very good. So he became enlightened, he could recollect past lives, he could read people's minds, he had amazing metta, could heal people, do all kinds of good things because his mind was so pure. Once you not attached, then your mind is like free, isn't it? And you can use it for all kinds of good things. So they invited him to a wedding, the biggest wedding in the province. Big businessman, politician, son and daughter getting married. And they had great faith in Lum Buddha, so they invited him to take a meal with the monks, give a blessing to the couple, and give a Dhamma talk. They gave a Dhamma talk all about the good karma that comes from keeping the 5 precepts and the 8 precepts. Gave a talk about the impermanence of everything. You know, we get older and all our possessions one day we have to separate from them, even the one we love, our partner. You know, this is a couple about to get married and he's teaching them about the truth of separation. Even if they have kids, the kids won't last. You have to separate from your kids when you die. At the end of the talk, they decided not to marry. And the guy went off and became a monk, and the girl went off and started keeping the 8 precepts and practiced meditation. It was a big surprise. It's the power of the Dhamma, power of truth. It doesn't happen very often. In the time of the Buddha, it did. The Buddha, his own cousin, who's in Nanda, was getting married, and invited the Buddha for a blessing, and he got him to take his bowl back to the monastery with him, and then taught him, and he became a monk. So he gave up his wife on the first day. Not easy, but occasionally it happens. That's when the mind understands separation. Oh, separation is inevitable. Whatever you love in this world, you'll separate from it. No way around that. If you don't believe, well, okay, think it through. Do the questioning process, the anupasana or vipassana. Whatever I love and like, is it permanent or not? Is it suffering or happiness? Is it self or not? Do I own it or not? Just go through it, go through the list. And it's just teaching the mind, and not just on the level of belief. It's not just something you believe in, it's something you get to know through constant reflection, observation, observing the rising, passing away of thoughts, moods, attachments, craving and attachment. For one who sees, they only have a little bit of grit, dirt under their fingernails. They don't have to have much more suffering in life because they see clear vision. They know, they see. So insight into emptiness, it frees the mind from dukkha, which is what we want. Nobody likes being stressed, worried, angry, sad, lost. Frees the mind from all of that. No more tears of suffering, no more misunderstandings and arguments. Just list all the suffering you can have as a human being. It means less and less of that. Illness, physical pain, mental pain. As we chant, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair, all gone. All that's left is peace, happiness. So we call Nibbana the highest happiness. So I'll leave you with those reflections tonight.